So now we have a panel discussion, and I'd like to introduce the members of the panel and invite them to come up on stage as I introduce them. First, we have Brooke Vogler, is a medical cannabis patient and veteran of the Australian Defence Force. Brooke saw active service in Iraq and later joined the New South Wales Police Integrity Commission. She began her health treatments in Defence to manage symptoms of PTSD and chronic pain. After negative reactions to most medications, she sought alternative treatments and found the most relief in the form of medical cannabis. Brooke wants cannabis available for those who want to reduce the harm and risk associated with treating complex comorbid conditions with polypharmacology. She now advocates with Weeded Warriors for cooperation to establish immediate interim measures to progress the issue amongst the veteran and wider community. Please welcome Brooke to the stage. And of course we welcome Dr. Sue back to the stage as well. And also Mr. Greg Barnes, barrister and writer, who we met yesterday. He's a former national president of the Australian Lawyers Alliance and practices in the areas of criminal law, family law and administrative law. He is a former senior political advisor and the author of 3 books on Australian politics. He ran the 1999 Republic referendum campaign and was national chair of the Australian Republican movement from 2000 to 2002. Greg is a weekly columnist with the Hobart Mercury and writes regularly for other outlets. Please welcome Greg. Greg's not here yet. Melbourne Sunday traffic, everyone's going to church. Mr. Mick Palmer is a barrister and 33-year career police officer with extensive experience in police leadership and reform in community, national and international policing. He was appointed Commissioner of the Northern Territory Police, Fire and Emergency Services Agency in 1988 and served in that position until 1994 when he was appointed Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police. Mr. Palmer is not here either and held his position for 7 years until his retirement in March 2001. We'll get there. I know Beck's here. Rebecca Horton is a patient and caregiver advocate. As a partner of a combat veteran, she has intimate knowledge of service-induced stress and the effect on partners and families. She watched her partner Michael become a zombie on defence-prescribed pharmaceuticals and dangerously abused alcohol. After making the decision to leave the workforce to become a stay-at-home caregiver and having recognised that the evidence-based treatments were exacerbating Michael's conditions, she began extensive research into PTSD and related conditions to find information on alternative treatments. Frustrated by the lack of acknowledgement she received towards the modalities that were providing great benefit, she and Michael travelled to the United States to meet with leading professors, researchers and in-the-field practitioners, either studying or already utilising more holistic modalities to manage post-traumatic stress. She is co-founder of Weeded Warrior, Australia's only ex-service organisation advocating for veterans' safe access to cannabis. So please welcome Rebecca Horton. And I would like to welcome Dr. David Basser, who we met on Friday, to come up and host this panel. Thank you, David.
So I guess it'd be nice to hear a bit about personal experience. Beck and Brooke, who'd like to go first? I guess
I'll go first. My partner served in Afghanistan in 2010. He was involved in the Battle of Derapat. I won't go too much into his story, but when he came back a completely different person. He very quickly used alcohol as an outlet, and he almost immediately went on to went through the conventional treatment, which was talking to psychiatrists and psychologists and being prescribed multiple medications. When I would discuss with his psychiatrist his alcohol use with the pharmaceuticals, the doctor just dismissed me and told me that he was drinking about, the normal amount that someone in the military would drink. That didn't really make sense to me when Michael was breaking down every night, struggling to cry, actually. When he was melting down, he would say to me, "I really feel like I need to cry, but I physically cannot." He would get very angry at times. He would suffer nightmares, night sweats, hypervigilance, dissociation, you name it. He really struggled. It doesn't just affect the veteran, it also very much affects the families. And so ultimately, there are, the ripple comes to me as well, being his full-time carer. And so I also struggle. And so when you've got two people at home who are desperately trying to just get through the day, it's really difficult when the pharmaceuticals just create a fog. So that's what we were in for a really long time. So that was...
So Beck, would you say it's sort of a transmissible disease then? In a way, passed on? Were you happy to see him home when he came home?
Absolutely.
And then were you traumatised by his return?
Oh,
the way he was?
Absolutely. It was nightly that he was breaking down. He would be, on the ground, just rocking back and forth, just breathing heavily, sweating, and just saying, "I wish it was me. Why wasn't it me? I wish I didn't come home,"
So then did you need treatment?
Absolutely. I went through a lot of therapy. There was a time when my psychiatrist actually wanted to hospitalise me, which really wasn't a possibility because obviously Michael would have had nobody. I have had struggled with chronic pain. There are even times when I suffer night sweats, and that's not ever something that I've had before up until...
Sue, do you find this happens with families in America?
Oh,
Is this description?
Yeah, it's very, what she says really resonates with me because all the vets and the families that I take care of, it's most heartbreaking stories of them trying to come back, reintegrate into their family and community, and just being first of all, just a slave to all the pharmaceuticals, just being put through, just getting pummeled with so many prescriptions and being so obtunded by all of these medication side effects. And the worst being, some of the most obvious side effects, like the weight gain and the sexual dysfunction. Here you've got guys that just want to be back and to be able to enjoy their loved ones, and we make them fat and impotent, and it's really shameful that we have not been able to find a better structure to help these guys.
And this transfers to the communities, I presume, as well. So instead of having community support, they become isolated. Did you find that, Brooke?
Yeah, I guess this is sort of a healing journey for me, and only in the last 5 years have I started to really tell my story comfortably and speak openly about my cannabis use. But I began treatment for mental illness in defence, and that began with an antidepressant and the regular psycho-counselling, and also, the practices that you learn in defence of hiding the problem, and
You weren't in combat, were you?
I was
Frontline?
Yeah, I was in
You
were?
were?
Yeah, I deployed
Okay.
to Iraq for the
Okay.
commencement of hostilities on a Navy ship, and we cleared mines.
Have explosions and things
Yeah,
around
we
you?
did have explosions. Yeah.
How did that
That, you know,
affect you
ultimately
at all?
the Department of Veterans Affairs accept that my post-traumatic stress disorder is war-caused.
No, I didn't mean that. When you had you've experienced firsthand.
I experienced that
And-
firsthand.
and-
However, I was sort of in an environment where I was also experiencing a level of sexual harassment within that
Okay.
hostile
So that-
war zone. So
That
yeah,
was a contributor.
It was, yeah, a contributing
Yeah.
factor. So,
So
yeah,
it's-
I'm
it's
a
not-
combat veteran, if you would.
It's not just the firing line, there are other issues
It's
that
that
you
sense
found.
of helplessness and hopelessness that you feel in an occasion where your life is threatened or you're
And we've spoken before, but Weeded Warriors isn't just about combat vets, is it? It's about
It's not at all.
frontline
Yeah.
service people.
Yeah, it is.
And do you think that the people that you talk with, police, ambulance, nurses, do they feel that same culture of lack of, is that?
I think, you know, everybody in a lot of jobs out there feels that there's a taboo there, and certainly in defence and in those frontline jobs, there's an expectation that you carry on and that you deal with your symptoms, and part of dealing with them is maladapting and mismanaging them, and also going ahead with the regular treatment. And that's what, most people do.
And what sort of support do you get in these by the hierarchies above you if you flag that you're beginning to feel this way?
Sure. So I guess my experience was that I was sort of identified as having some post-deployment stress, and I was referred to a psychologist in defence. But my behaviour at work and myself was not right, and I damaged a wall at work and in a fit of rage, which was not me, and I was punished. Yeah, I had.
So you're seen to be the problem.
Well, yeah, you know, there's a problem with being able to speak out about mental health within these industries. Like there's a problem about being able to speak out about drug use. Yeah.
And when you went through the regular therapies, how much support did you feel that you were getting in those? Were you being listened to?
I found it difficult to share my story, and I found it. You go through a legal process, really. It's not
Not
like,
a medical process.
Well, it's not a medical process. No, it becomes a medico-legal process. So, yeah, you're not getting support. You're fighting against a system that's actually trying to disprove you rather than.
And why do you
support
think they're doing that?
Sorry.
Why do you think they're doing that?
They've got a problem on their hands, and they're really trying to manage this with the tools that they have, and they're not working.
Yeah, from my experience, the gold standard treatment hasn't been anything more than, it doesn't really lead to anything more than a silver bullet, really. It's really not good enough at all. We need to see change.
So what about you have veteran organisation like the RSL? How much support do you feel that?
These groups are really reluctant to speak publicly, you know, and we're hoping to be part of a swell of support that will sort of encourage people within these groups to step forward. But more and more these groups are showing support and interest in cannabis. We know at the grassroots level that veterans use cannabis, and we know that veterans need help to know how to do that properly.
Well, tell us what cannabis did for you then.
Wow. It got me here today, and it's really given me a chance to see outside of that whole process that I was caught up in, which was really being nothing more than my diagnosis and looking forward to nothing but a life of pain and medication that was really toxic for me. And so cannabis offered me an alternative to a really toxic existence of chronic pain and symptoms that I was unable to manage, but I seemed to be able to receive a lot of drugs for. Yeah.
But you need, I would imagine, other support vehicles, not just cannabis. Would that be
I guess
right?
that's what this group has been about.
So you have to
providing
build
the
community
support first for veterans, and enabling them to get together, share experiences, and develop ways to treat themselves.
Okay. So access. What are the barriers that you see?
Yeah. Okay, the barriers that we're currently at. Federally legal, state regulated, but DVA is a federal department, and so their stance is that they won't look at it until there are federal regulations. So until that point, I guess doctors aren't prescribing it to veterans, and veterans aren't able to get it covered, and veterans and their families are unable to afford legal cannabis, themselves. So until DVA covers it, there's not really any other option but the black market. And unfortunately, we have a legal system that does go after veterans and will raid their houses and does put them through the court systems and does still arrest them for driving offences. So none of that helps veterans or their families deal with, the things that they're already
With the
dealing with.
driving offences, Brooke, what's the consequences if you get pulled up or if you get marked as having cannabis in your system? What happens, what the potential?
I believe that at this point, and it's a real contention, that we're getting to the courts, and that a magistrate is having to decide that it's not worth prosecuting people for these sorts of charges. So generally you'll get a Section 10, but at the point of detection you'll be forbidden for driving for 24 hours.
What about with DVA pensions or supports? Is there any consequence there?
Yeah, there is certainly for a lot of people on certain payments. Being sent to jail will cease those payments. So people are really looking at their lives, their homes, their families. There are really good reasons why veterans don't speak up, practices they've learnt in defence and ongoing.
So Sue was talking about the suicides in America. What are your, if you're happy to share it, personal experiences, both of you, with thoughts of personal suicide or others around you?
Definitely thoughts of suicide.
You have?
Most certainly. Have dealt many times with Michael feeling homicidal and suicidal. Haven't known where to turn to, who to talk to. And had many friends attempt suicide, have gone to their rescue many a times, and have seen them go through the hospital system when they do that, and it is nothing short of disgusting, really.
We really see, like, when that happens, people are on a mix of pharmaceutical drugs.
Absolutely.
And we want to highlight that the side effects of a lot of these drugs include sort of symptoms like suicidality and rage and depression and irritability and sexual dysfunction. We're used to a horror list of side effects.
How do you cope with it?
Well, we don't. That's why we turn to cannabis. Yeah.
Does it help that?
It does, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it helps us to choose an alternative beyond pharmaceutical drugs.
So
which
if you've
are-
got strong suicidal thoughts,
There aren't any drugs out there that have been
when you use
proven.
cannabis,
Cannabis in a New
How-
Mexico trial was proven to...
Sorry?
Cannabis in a New Mexico trial was shown to reduce
but
suicidality.
your personal experiences, how long does do you use it straight away when you're feeling that way?
Yeah, we sure do.
And how long does it take to kick in?
Well, we
for
want
effect?
to really highlight that there is a place for smoked and vaporized
Yeah,
cannabis,
I understand that.
particularly in the treatment for
But
veterans.
in personal experience, you have suicidal thoughts. How long does it take for those thoughts to subside? Is there any?
This is an
Is it vary?
Can I
These
just
are
say,
thoughts
I
that you
haven't
could deal
had
with
really,
every day, really.
Yeah.
These are thoughts that you deal with every day.
Yeah.
And it's not sort of a thing that we can manage like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But cannabis helps you get through.
It
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, along with many other tools, yeah, it's the community and the support that we can give each other through our therapy that
So-
that gets
So
us.
it's that entourage effect,
Yeah.
not just of
Yeah,
cannabis.
there's many modalities that combine really well with cannabis, and Beck and Mick have had real success with some of those particularly.
Are there any other therapies that you think might complement?
Well, I might start and then I'll let you. Certainly, in my experience, diet has been absolutely essential in treating mental illness and all the symptoms of PTSD and the other sort of disorders or illnesses that come with it, such as IBS and things like that. So. Flotation therapy has been instrumental and truly profound in helping Michael with his nightmares and really playing back his experiences and being able to look at them from a completely different perspective. It has helped drastically with his sleep. And in fact, the first few sessions, that's all he did. He didn't, do anything else but sleep, and he really needed that. That was, an amazing step to his in his management and in his treatment. And the things of yoga and mindfulness and gardening.
What about music?
Music, anything that resonates with you. The thing is you have to find your passion and your purpose, but you cannot do that until you can clear the fog, and you can clear the fog with cannabis. Cannabis helps you actually go find those other things that are out there that you were too isolated and too afraid to even go out and find.
How do you? What's your experience, Sue?
No, I want to echo what Beck has said. I think that, whether it's yoga or horse therapy or any of these modalities are readily available to vets now. The VAs have started to embrace this and make it available. But the problem is that when they're in the throes of such severe PTSD, they just can't. It's hard enough for them to just get out of bed every day, to find the will to live every day. So we're seeing that vets who are using cannabis either as monotherapy or as adjunctive treatment are suddenly interested in engaging in this. Finally, they have a will to examine these as a real option for them. So it's been very exciting to see how we have one interesting. You heard talk about the American Legion. There's another organization, the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, that they have a post in Denver. That's their very first post that they ever created. it's run by a lot of younger veterans who have infused cannabis into all of their activities now. So you can imagine it's Denver, Colorado, so it's readily accessible. So whether they have an Art of War program where they do art therapy and they allow cannabis to be actively used as part of the a part of that modality, and it's really it's incredible to see the kind of art that's being produced there and guys who are getting a lot of gratification out of that.
So you would call it a gateway medication to recovery.
There you go.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to say it.
But Brooke, do you want to add anything, Brooke?
I just feel like cannabis, it really helped me to look at things naturally and organically. When I was on a combination of pharmaceuticals, I really couldn't care. I didn't care. I was completely numb, and I had no incentive or motivation to care about myself.
So it opened you to allow other people to come into your life?
It did, yeah, and
Okay.
to allow me to care for myself.
Perhaps any questions people might like to ask? Yeah.
Hi, good
please.
morning.
Do you want to use the microphone? Is that all right? Dave doesn't need one sometimes. So.
I'll go first and then I'll give it to this lady the opportunity.
Sorry, go on.
Dr. Sue, congratulations again for your resilience.
Thank you.
I know a little bit of your history, I know how much you have, faced some troubles to get this far. Congratulations. You're doing a great good for a lot of good people. We need it. I'd like to ask you two questions. One is obviously about alternative treatments for PTSD for veterans of war. I have a personal friend, he's a professor of psychiatry, and has been treating, in his case, his focus groups are women victims of sexual assault, which is also, very common type of PTSD, and has been very successful under, various obvious controls, making sessions of combined therapy. And in some occasions, usually he runs 10 sessions, and 3 of those 10 sessions are with MDMA. And of course, there's a doctor, there's a nurse, there's a proper protocol for that, and he has been reporting very good success. And also allegorical studies or stories I heard from veterans in the US that sometimes they group together and they also have joint experiences with psychedelic drugs as part of the rehabilitation process or whatever, going through whatever you want to qualify. And these are of non-clinical or non-scientific experience. So if you could elaborate a little bit on those alternative treatments for PTSD, that'd be great. Because I recall you mentioned MDMA, during your speech in particular.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because we're really proud of my sponsor, MAPS, is a charity that's been leading the way on psychedelic research, specifically focusing on getting MDMA through the entire FDA drug development process. And the data on MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for treating PTSD is so impressive. We already, our data from phase 2 showed that 80% of the patients who went through those trials had their PTSD went into full remission, not just what we think about with cannabis, that it's more for symptom control. These MDMA patients had no detectable symptoms of PTSD at the end of 3 to 4 sessions. So it's very exciting to see. Not everybody wants MDMA though, and not everybody is a candidate for that. That's why it's so important to pursue all avenues. And I think MDMA and there's a number of other psychedelics that veterans have been exploring. They're kind of the tip of the spear here because they've been examining these on their own. They're not waiting for the government to do trials. Many of you have probably heard veterans going down to Peru using ayahuasca or other ibogaine and tons of other modalities. I hear about vets microdosing LSD, and I would love to study that more. But MDMA is probably just a few years away from finishing phase 3 trials and could be on the market soon as a legitimate treatment. We're working closely with our federal government. The National PTSD Center is endorsing this MDMA research, so I think you'll see that emerge pretty quick here.
Thank you. First of all, nothing but absolute respect for sharing your very personal stories and lived experience Thank you so much. What I do want to know, and I think it's without doubt that the efficacy of medical cannabis is out there, and we understand that. But what can we do as a community and also as people who want to help actually influence our lawmakers and our policymakers in a way that will change the current practices? I believe there needs to be some type of paradigm shift in the way that our lawmakers look towards not just our military personnel, but also our emergency services personnel as well. And I think there is a very real opportunity now in our community, and certainly at a level where politicians can make a very real difference. And I'm asking you, what can we do to help you, and how can we lobby for you?
I think you've sort of explained it there. You can continue to lobby for us. Yeah, contact your local members and your representatives in state and Commonwealth Parliament particularly.
And let you guys know that you're supporting.
Yeah, follow us on social media and spread the word.
Click the like button.
A comment on the question. The first thing is that people in the audience might not be aware that in medicine, I'm not bending down to that, forget it. In medicine, there's a big issue about adequate representation in discussions and panels by women. And I just want the audience to note that the only people bright enough and strong enough to stand up this morning are women. But a question, and I guess it's a nerdy one. One of the interesting questions is that there have been some attempts to get this up in Australia. And one of the questions that keep coming back to us from not this particular group of people, but others, is, are you screening for mefloquine? We will not participate with you unless you're making sure that there's a history of mefloquine in this. Because there's an association, obviously, as you know, you may be aware of this sort of fringe debate that's going on, that mefloquine is also associated as an etiological agent behind PTSD, rather than any traumatic. So
I won't let you know I had 3 rounds of anthrax inoculation.
And you look so good for it. The question that I have, is this something that even featured in your discussions? We got trolled about saying, no, we actually hadn't considered this. Was this something you say, for example, Sue, that came up with American vets? I don't know if it's part of their overseas deployment regime, but is it something that they're excited about or that they want included?
I'm not sure. Mefloquine?
Mefloquine was an
anti-malarial.
anti-malarial.
Mefloquine is an anti-malarial that's a prophylactic that's deployed. It's associated with psychiatric illness, and some people are saying it's the cause.
I see.
And so in Australia, there's a lot of people. I don't know if they're noisy, or I don't know if it's that there's a lot of them who are saying that it has to be in. Now, I can see my Australian friends nodding their heads going, they've probably heard of it in this debate.
Actually, we have a lot of veterans who come to us feeling or saying that they have mefloquine toxicity. So, and they very much feel that cannabis helps them. The veterans that we're seeing that come to us are the ones who are pretty much at the end of the line. They've been through every treatment all the way through to electroconvulsive therapy. You know, they've tried everything and they are desperate. They are the ones who are coming to us, and they are the ones who are, you know, suffering a lot of things, including mefloquine toxicity.
It's completely legit, but for an Australian trial, it might be something that we need to include as a confounder, you know, to rule in, rule out. That's all.
A good point, yeah.
Hi, Lene Carter from the Medical Cannabis Advisory Group, which is an advocacy group based in Queensland. Just a question for Dr. Sue Sisley and for Brooke and Beck as well. We've got a situation in Queensland where patients being prescribed THC products cannot actually have to sign a declaration to say that they can't operate a vehicle. If you're dealing with veterans who already come back from war isolated, facing all of those challenges that they're already facing, what is your opinion on this issue? And what do you think we need to do about it?
Yeah, I think there's already some fairly, solid studies looking at driving safety in cannabis use. And I'll give you an example. Just in our research, our clinical trial, the FDA allowed veterans to drive within 3 hours of dosing. So they sign an informed consent that just assures the clinical trial that they will not drive within the first 3 hours of dosing, but after that, they're allowed to drive freely. So the FDA looked at the safety data that we sent, the driving safety studies that we submitted, and they felt that was defensible to use the 3-hour guideline. This is, of course, for smoking or vaping. It's not, we're not talking about using edibles and things, but I think that that's data that we can share with you that you might be able to show, because these were trials published in peer-reviewed journals, and I think the fact that the FDA is allowing our clinical trial to use that as a guideline should be pretty good evidence to the government that this is over the top. You know?
We can do one more quick question, if you like.
It's a social justice issue, isn't it? It extends beyond veterans and their mobility. Yeah.
Hey, Brian White, thanks for what you've said this morning. It's amazing. And Beck, I just have a couple of comments actually. What's your experiences secondary PTSD? My grandfather was an airman in the Second World War.
Yeah, Ben.
Can you hear me?
Question?
Question.
Sorry, mate.
Okay. How do you feel as a sufferer of secondary PTSD? Do you feel that your situation is adequately recognised by anyone in Veterans Affairs? I mean, this is a thing that's affected my family. My grandfather was an airman.
Suffered. Let him answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. We've got to.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Brian. Great question, and no. I would say the answer is no. The only support that families have is through VBCS, the Veterans and Veterans Family Counselling Service. It's counselling. That's the extent of what families, partners, caregivers, children get. And I mean, we're well aware that, children of Vietnam veterans have a much higher suicide rate of, others in the community. So, there's DVA and the government certainly are not looking out for partners or families of veterans at all.
So this is what? Is it a transmissible disease, really?
It's a transmissible disease.
And I think
transgenerational.
it'd be nice to thank the courage of the people at the panel, all of them, because Sue's been through the mill too. Thank you very much for your sharing.